In just 60 seconds, the monarchy's foundation shook. King Charles, behind closed palace doors, signed what aides now call the most explosive royal decree of the modern era. No press, no cameras, no council present, just a sealed envelope marked immediate implementation. What's inside has already redefined the line of succession and turned allies into enemies. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The announcement didn't come through the usual royal press channels. It didn't arrive with ceremony or heraldry. Instead, a sharp internal leak reached selected journalists. King Charles had authorized a private decree just moments ago, one that may redefine the future of the British monarchy forever. Signed and sealed under total confidentiality, it bore a rare monarchical stamp reserved only for emergency enactments. The timing was immediate. Within minutes, royal households were scrambling. Clarence House refused comment. Buckingham Palace sources offered only silence. Yet within the walls of Windsor, something had already begun to change. Confusion escalated as senior staff received contradicting internal directives. One statement listed Prince William as heir presumptive sovereign guardian, while another made reference to an unfamiliar role attributed to Catherine. These weren't standard titles. They were steeped in intentional vagueness designed not for public comprehension, but internal restructuring. Some whispered that this was Charles's way of protecting the monarchy's future in case of sudden instability. Others believed it was an emotional reaction, a last-ditch effort to restore legacy amid chaos. But no matter the motive, the effect was seismic. Royal aides revealed that only 3 individuals were present in the room when Charles signed the document: a royal legal advisor, a private secretary, and a senior cleric. Of the 3, 2 are now reportedly bound by an indefinite silence clause, their names wiped from palace rosters. The third, rumoured to be the same official who assisted Queen Elizabeth II with her Platinum Jubilee messages, has not been seen since. Speculation mounted when, within 15 minutes of the decree, Catherine was seen leaving Sandringham alone. No entourage, no William, just a black envelope pressed tightly in her hand. That's when the timeline twisted. Inside royal circles, the order of notification speaks volumes. Prince William, by all expectations, should have been the first to know. Yet it was Catherine who received direct communication immediately after the decree was executed. This quiet precedence raised alarms. Had Charles elevated her role in a way that sidestepped convention? Was this part of a hidden plan only a select few were permitted to witness? Reports suggest William found out not from the king but from Catherine herself. The emotional gravity of that moment has already become legend inside the palace. Aides describe King Charles before the signing as haunted yet resolute. Not sad, not nervous, but a man determined to act before time could rob him of the opportunity. His pen hovered before touching parchment. He reportedly asked aloud, "Is it too late to shape what they'll remember?" When the seal snapped shut, the weight of centuries bore down on a single decision, private, deliberate, and irrevocable. But what exactly did this sealed decree contain, and why has it sent shockwaves across the bloodlines of Windsor? A covert gathering in the Queen Mother's drawing room. No heralds, no public agenda, just a list of names and titles, read in chilling silence. This was not the Privy Council, but something far more ancient and far more absolute. Welcome to the Hidden Succession Council, a royal mechanism few even knew existed, revived by Charles in a desperate bid to control a future spiralling beyond his grasp. While the world speculated on Catherine's quiet elevation and William's haunting silence, deep within the palace walls, a darker narrative was unfolding. Not written for the press, nor meant for public record. The secret convocation was summoned under the codename Clarion, a term buried in royal codebooks, so old that only a select few in the royal archives could even interpret its use. Charles did not consult the cabinet, nor parliament. Instead, he called on legacy, on buried protocols, on ghosts of crises past. The Clarion Council, last whispered about during Edward VIII's abdication, had been revived. This wasn't consultation. It was recalibration. Sources say the meeting was conducted with chilling efficiency. No robes, no formality. Just the solemn presentation of obsidian key documents, sealed, historic and unread for decades, presented in a velvet pouch, said to have belonged to Queen Mary herself. Each council member was given precisely 1 hour to review the contents. No discussion allowed until the hour ended, and when it did, King Charles rose and stated simply, "The monarchy must not repeat its own silence." He did not ask for approval, he demanded resolve. Those present were chosen not for position but for loyalty. Princess Anne, Prince Edward, the Archbishop, one senior advisor from the late Queen's household. Notably missing? Camilla. Her name wasn't even mentioned in the documentation. Palace insiders reveal this was intentional. Charles feared that including her would fracture the council before its purpose was fulfilled. He needed unity, not negotiation. The absence spoke louder than presence ever could. A royal aide later leaked that Charles referred to the moment as a clarion restoration, signaling that this was not just a meeting, but a rebirth of monarchical power through ancient channels. It was a move of desperation, perhaps, but also of astonishing cunning, because under the Clarion Protocol, the council holds one terrifying authority, the power to override traditional succession, should the reigning sovereign deem the crown's future at risk. And Charles did exactly that, not to alter who would be king, but to redefine the path, the guardians, the regulators of what would come next. Historians confirm that the Clarion Council, though almost mythical in public memory, was never formally dissolved. It existed in the margins, waiting for a time of reckoning. That time, it seems, is now. And though the identities of all members may never be revealed, we know enough to understand one thing. This was not a ceremonial revival. It was a strategic resurrection, a declaration that the old order had failed to protect the future, and a new structure had to rise from the silence of history. And when the ink dried, it wasn't just names that changed, but destinies, shattered and rewritten. They called him the heir, the stabilizer, the future king. But in this new decree, William isn't just the successor, he's the executioner of Charles's final will. And the price? A vow that would place him in eternal conflict with his own mother's legacy, and perhaps even his wife. When the decree was finally sealed for internal circulation, one title stood out: protector of the crown's integrity. It wasn't ceremonial, it wasn't honorary, it was functional, absolute, and carried weight beyond anything William had ever been prepared for. In that moment, he was no longer just the heir to the throne. He became the monarch's enforcer, the one tasked with defending not the family but the institution, even against his own blood. And within that role lay powers that had never before been assigned to an heir apparent. William was granted executive oversight over all future royal appointments, giving him authority that even Camilla could not contest. Every patronage, every title, every council seat would now pass through him. But that authority came with a price buried in fine print. A controversial clause, quietly marked under Appendix Clarion 2, allegedly strips William of the ability to abdicate without a majority vote from the Clarion Council. This wasn't just a promotion, it was a binding contract with the monarchy's survival. If he ever wanted out, it wouldn't be his choice alone. That clause, insiders say, was not Charles's original idea. It was suggested by Princess Anne during the Succession Council, an act that would protect the line from crumbling under emotional pressure, no matter how heavy the crown became. William's first appearance after the decree told the story without words. His expression, stone-cold, composed, betrayed none of the turmoil that had reportedly unfolded in private hours earlier. Multiple insiders confirm he pleaded with his father to delay the enactment, not for himself, but for the sake of unity. He knew the shock would send rifts through the already fragile core of the royal family. But Charles refused. The king's response, according to a senior aide, was simple and brutal: you were born to protect it, not to question it. And so, with heavy reluctance, William signed the royal acknowledgement form, effectively cementing his position not just as a successor, but as a guardian with no escape route. But the most painful blow may have come not from the institution, but from within his own home. Catherine, according to palace whispers, was not informed of the decree's contents until after William had signed. The revelation shocked even those closest to them. For a couple known for their unity, this decision shattered the illusion. One courtier noted, for the first time, they weren't aligned. And the silence between them afterward said more than words ever could. What William now holds is not power but burden. He stands as the iron spine of the new monarchy, armed with authority that isolates as much as it commands. And while his father may have believed he was gifting his son the tools to preserve the realm, the truth is far more complex. William has become the pivot on which the monarchy's future teeters, and the cost of failure would not fall on him alone. But if William was entrusted to guard the crown's future, then who did Charles secretly empower to shape its heart? No announcement, no title, no portrait, and yet, buried within the final page of the decree was a clause so powerful, even the Archbishop reportedly gasped. Catherine granted sovereign advisory privileges not seen since Queen Victoria's inner circle, has now stepped into a role never meant to exist. It was the kind of insertion that would have gone unnoticed by most. One line, no fanfare, no heraldic language, just a clause quietly designated sovereign liaison of the Crown's legacy, tucked beneath the primary succession directives like a whisper sealed with wax. And yet, for those who understood its implications, that whisper roared louder than the rest. With this title, Charles had created a new center of power, one grounded not in ceremony or birthright, but in knowledge, memory, and control of the past. Catherine was not crowned but consecrated, and with that came access to one of the monarchy's most guarded instruments, the Royal Archives' sealed chambers. Those chambers, buried deep within Windsor and Balmoral, contain more than dusty records. They house succession maps, disputed codicils, unpublished letters, and hidden royal wills never revealed to the public. Now, Catherine had complete autonomy to consult them, not with William, not with the council, alone. Her authority wasn't just advisory, it was ancestral. She would interpret constitutional tradition, measure the weight of precedent, and quietly shape the Crown's historical narrative moving forward. And no one, not even the sitting monarch, could override her assessment once it was delivered to the Clarion Council. Palace sources confirmed that this clause came with an attached document titled Appendix Windsor 4, written in Charles's own hand. It is rumoured to contain a series of notes and reflections he penned over the course of the last 5 years, drawing connections between past queens, royal collapses, and the systemic weaknesses that plagued the institution during times of instability. He wrote of patterns, how ignoring legacy led to division, and how Catherine, in his view, represented the final convergence of grace and guardianship. For Charles, this wasn't favoritism, it was strategy. He was entrusting her, not with the throne, but with its soul. What made the move even more staggering was who it excluded. Camilla, the Queen Consort, had no access to the appendix, no copy, no mention. Her name did not appear once in the accompanying documents related to Catherine's designation. It was a silent, symbolic removal, stripping her of any voice in the monarchy's past, and by extension its future. For someone once hailed as Charles's closest companion, in reshaping the royal image, her complete omission from this structure was nothing short of breathtaking. One courtier described it as a vanishing in plain sight. Catherine, meanwhile, has remained publicly poised. But insiders describe a distinct shift, an air of quiet authority that now precedes her. She doesn't need to speak it. Her silence now carries institutional weight. Every step she takes through the palace echoes not just with present power, but with the ghosts of monarchs long buried. And she walks not as a consort, but as a keeper of lineage. As Catherine quietly gains control of the crown's historical heartbeat, another royal finds herself exiled from power without warning, without dignity. There was no scandal, no speech, just silence. Camilla's office was emptied before sunrise, her private advisors reassigned, and a whispered directive from Charles's decree has now left her without any standing in matters of state, charity, or succession. What happened behind those velvet-lined walls? The fallout was swift and surgical. Within mere hours of the decree's activation, internal notices were delivered quietly, discreetly, but with irreversible consequences. Every committee linked to succession, legacy, or institutional patronage saw Camilla's name vanish from their registers. The Queen Consort Advisory Panel, once crafted to give her a unique role in navigating royal engagement strategy, was officially dissolved before the next morning's staff meeting. No thank you, no farewell, just finality. Palace insiders described the tone of the notice as administrative, detached, and final. One simply read, "Responsibilities will be reassigned under immediate effect," and reassigned they were. Within days, charities long aligned with Camilla began receiving updated correspondence not from her, but from Catherine's office. Letters once signed with the Queen. Consort's elegant initials now arrived under the Sovereign Liaison seal. Projects once overseen by Camilla's advisory board were quietly redirected, repurposed, or discontinued. Organizations expressed confusion, some reached out for clarity, none received a response from Clarence House. Instead, it became evident the redirection wasn't just logistical, it was ideological. Camilla's chapter in the active shaping of the monarchy had been closed, not with disgrace, but with omission. The most startling element of all was the complete erasure of her name from the decree itself. Nowhere in the official pages, not even in ceremonial acknowledgements or honorary language, did Camilla appear. The omission wasn't an oversight, it was deliberate. A calculated silence, a void so loud it echoed through every corridor of the royal estate. For a woman who had stood beside Charles during his rise, who had weathered controversy, skepticism, and even public vilification, this final act was as cold as it was decisive. She had been removed, not as punishment but as strategy. Staff at Clarence House began resigning or transferring in quiet clusters. Others, it seems, were reassigned before they could even process the implications. One long-serving assistant was overheard muttering, "It's as if she's already gone." Labeled files were seen being carted out, folders tagged with chilling specificity, restricted legacy assets. No one knows exactly what those files contained. Some say they included Camilla's personal notes on the succession advisory reforms. Others suggest they were filled with correspondence tied to her independent engagements, now deemed obsolete. But the most revealing account came from a senior courtier who witnessed Camilla's private reaction. No tears, no confrontation, just a single moment of pause, followed by what they described as ice-cold fury. The kind of silence that isn't shocked or wounded, but betrayed. She didn't ask questions. She didn't issue a statement. She simply left the room, and with her, the last breath of her influence over the future. With Camilla cast out of the equation, the decree's next twist reshapes the monarchy's very foundation through a child the world underestimated. He's barely a teenager, but Prince George has now become the cornerstone of the monarchy's redesigned future. Not just an heir, but named custodian of heritage in waiting. And behind this poetic title lies a shocking vault of letters, secrets, and a role crafted by Charles himself. The title, at first glance, appears ceremonial, soft, symbolic. But within the context of Charles's decree, it is anything but. Custodian of heritage is more than a royal nod to tradition, it is a codified responsibility built on centuries of constitutional memory and inherited philosophy. George is no longer being prepared simply to inherit a throne. He is being shaped to inherit an understanding, a blueprint, and a burden that few monarchs have ever truly grasped before their coronation. This is not training for power. It is indoctrination into the monarchy's most secretive core. And at the heart of it all stands one vault locked since 1952, never opened until now. That vault, buried deep within Windsor Castle, is said to contain documents penned by generations of sovereigns. Queen Mary, King George VI, and most significantly Queen Elizabeth II. Among the artifacts reportedly stored inside are a collection of letters Elizabeth wrote during her most tumultuous years, private reflections on political crises, emotional betrayals, and dire warnings for the institution's future. These writings were never published. They were never even spoken of outside her most inner circle. Now, per Charles's decree, they will be presented to George one by one when he reaches key milestones in his training. But only under the guidance of one person, Catherine. It is Catherine, not William, who has been tasked with supervising George's development under the Royal Legacy Protocol. That in itself is monumental. While William governs the Crown's present through his new succession oversight role, Catherine shapes its emotional and constitutional future through her son. Their roles are now symbiotic. One guards the front gates, the other builds what lies beyond them. The Queen Mother's traditions, Elizabeth's regrets, Victoria's doubts. All of it is now Catherine's to filter, and George's to absorb. But not everyone agreed with this level of responsibility being handed down so young. According to insiders, William initially pushed back, calling the designation too heavy for a child. He reportedly told Charles, "Let him be a boy before you ask him to become a pillar." But Charles wouldn't yield. The monarchy, in his view, could no longer afford to wait for maturity. It had to shape it early. There was no time left for error. Not after what the institution had endured, not with the fractures still visible in public trust, and not with the legacy teetering between revival and ruin. The title Custodian of Heritage in Waiting finds its earliest known mention in a forgotten document authored by Queen Mary, where she wrote, "One must rise before the crown is offered, not after it is placed." It seems Charles found those words prophetic. And now, in George he sees not a boy but a keystone, a memory in motion, a legacy alive. But while George's path is being quietly lit, another royal has taken center stage in a storm of controversy, and it's not one the crown anticipated. She was the quiet strength behind the throne, but no more. Charles's decree did more than honor his sister. It reignited her as a political force, with a newly minted title and contro. Over the royal ethics chamber, Anne may be the only one powerful enough to challenge William or shield Catherine. The title itself carries a weight that few outside the inner circle fully understand: Crown Steward Emerita. It is not ceremonial, it is corrective. It places Anne as the living bridge between ancient precedent and modern authority, granting her not just influence, but enforcement. Her role is to ensure that no future restructuring of royal power, no matter how urgent or politically convenient, can bypass the moral and historical framework that once protected the crown from tearing itself apart. With a single signature, Charles handed his sister a power no royal woman has held in generations: the right to stop the monarchy mid-motion if she believes it is drifting toward disaster. This new authority comes with a decisive blade: veto power. Any future reshaping of royal titles, advisory roles, or succession mechanisms must now pass through Anne's review. This did not go unnoticed by William. Their first private meeting following the decree is already being described in hushed tones. No raised voices, no visible confrontation. Just a long silence between them, followed by Anne sliding a marked document across the table. Insiders claim it was a marked-up copy of Clause Clarion 9, a section of the decree rumoured to give William emergency override powers during constitutional crises. Anne, it seems, demanded a review immediately, not as a protest, as a warning. Her influence does not stop at the palace gates. As Crown Steward Emerita, Anne also holds oversight on the Crown's ethical obligations to the Commonwealth, an area where power and perception collide with dangerous force. She now has authority to intervene in diplomatic royal engagements if she believes they contradict ancestral agreements or colonial redress efforts long buried under modern politics. Some see this as symbolic, others recognize it as dangerously real, because in the wrong hands this power could ignite global controversy. In Anne's hands, it becomes something else entirely, a controlled burn aimed at truth rather than image. Within royal corridors, a quiet theory has begun to circulate, that this was no accident, that Charles did not elevate Anne merely to honour her service. He placed her where he did as a calculated counterbalance to William's expanding reach. A moral check, a living conscience, someone who would never bow to ambition disguised as duty. Someone who could look the future king in the eye and tell him when the crown had crossed its own shadow. And when it comes to Catherine, Anne's role may be even more delicate. Protector or challenger, no one yet knows. But her loyalty to the integrity of the institution may place her squarely between husband and wife if power ever forces them apart. Anne herself has said nothing publicly, but sources close to her describe a woman reawakened, not energized by authority but sharpened by necessity. The throne may pass through William, the legacy may be shaped by Catherine, but the conscience of the monarchy now stands with Anne, and she is no longer content to remain silent. As Anne reclaims influence and realigns loyalties, the next shock emerges not from protocol but from inheritance. In the basement of Balmoral, behind a portrait of Queen Victoria, lies a vault sealed by King George VI. Within it, titles erased from the official record, legacies the monarchy buried. But Charles's decree has unearthed them, and with it, names we never expected to re-enter the royal fold. The vault was never intended for reawakening. It was a tomb of titles, shamed into silence. Scandals, betrayals, political upheaval, each of the titles buried within it had once represented a fracture in the royal bloodline. And yet, in a stunning move buried deep in the pages of the newly activated decree, King Charles ordered their reactivation. The Earl of Arundel, the Duchess of Kendal, the Baron Clarion, each of them centuries old, each of them marked by disgrace, and now each of them revived. It is not just a symbolic gesture, it is the resurrection of royal ghosts made flesh again through inheritance. These weren't titles handed down like crowns. They were locked away with intention. The Earl of Arundel's lineage was severed in the aftermath of a constitutional betrayal. The Duchess of Kendal connected to a royal figure whose influence once threatened the sovereignty of Parliament, and the Baron Clarion abolished under mysterious circumstances shortly after a quiet exile in 1919. To revive them is to rewrite history. To grant them new successors is to send a message to the entire realm. The monarchy is no longer afraid of its own buried truths, and it seems Charles intends to go further. Rather than default to traditional lines of descent, the decree authorizes the selection of new bearers chosen through private succession advisement, not public ceremony. Whispers echo through royal channels that Lady Louise Windsor, long overlooked in formal hierarchies, may be considered for one of these re-established titles. Her intelligence, her composure, her deep rapport with Catherine. It all points to a quiet grooming one that might now have found its final destination. But the most haunting revelation lies not in the names, but in the timing. Sources confirm Catherine had reviewed vault materials weeks before the decree was signed. Her position as sovereign liaison of the Crown's legacy granted her early access to sealed documents, including succession patterns never before revealed to the public. Among the contents was a letter faded, but unmistakable in script. At the bottom, in Queen Elizabeth II's own hand, were the words, "In case of crisis, Clarion." The implication is staggering. That even the late Queen, known for her stoic resistance to constitutional experimentation, foresaw a moment when the old ways would no longer be enough. And in that moment, these lost titles would serve not as reminders of shame, but anchors for restoration. With the reactivation of these ghost titles, Charles has not just reached into the past, he has used it to forge an unspoken alliance between legacy and evolution. He is signaling that no chapter of royal history, however inconvenient, can remain sealed forever. That in order to rebuild, the monarchy must first reclaim what it once cast aside. But just when the dust begins to settle, the closing clause of Charles's decree reveals one final earth-shattering directive. The last paragraph of the private royal decree is now being whispered across every corridor of Windsor. Not a succession, but a preparation. Not a crowning, but a contingency. Has King Charles secretly set the stage for a monarchy without a monarch? And what role does Catherine truly play in this final design? The clause appears harmless at first glance, buried beneath formal language and legal subtext, phrased as a protective measure. But upon closer inspection, it is anything but ordinary. Titled Transition Protocol Aurelius, it grants the Clarion Council full authority to implement a sovereign contingency plan in the event of what it vaguely terms unforeseen disruption. But this is no medical fallback, no emergency abdication protocol. It is a structural shift, a blueprint for a monarchy that could exist without a singular figure at its helm. The clause does not name a successor, it names a system, a dual advisory construct with William and Catherine as its core. In this design, William no longer ascends alone. Catherine does not remain in the shadow of a crown. Instead, they move in tandem, mirroring the duel. headed eagle of ancient empires, equal in responsibility, distinct in function. The king's vision, it seems, was not merely to secure succession, but to dismantle the very idea of sole sovereignty, a monarchy that guides, not governs, a model where titles may still matter, but wisdom and legacy matter more. The people will see a crown, but behind it, two minds intertwined, complementary and unchallengeable. Confirmation of this paradigm comes from what the Archbishop has refused to disclose. A private briefing held immediately after the decree was signed was recorded but not archived. Its transcript, sources say, has been sealed, available only to the Clarion Council and select members of the House of Lords. One individual present called the session revolutionary in tone, irreversible in spirit. Another stated bluntly, "The monarchy as we knew it ended that day. What follows is something else entirely." And then there's the most unsettling signal of all. Charles has yet to confirm whether a second coronation ceremony will take place. While tradition suggests a formal investiture for his reign following the Queen's passing, internal memos now suggest otherwise. The king may never step back into the spotlight for such a spectacle. He may never lift the crown above his head in Westminster again. Instead, he may choose to remain the silent architect of this transformation, pulling back from the throne not in failure, but in vision, to watch his kingdom from a distance, not as a ruler, but as a reformer. The final decree lists Catherine's name last. There are no embellishments, no adjectives, no ceremonial phrasing, but it is the only name underlined twice in the king's own ink, as if to mark her not as the final mention, but the lasting one. The anchor in an ocean of change, the quiet force who now holds, not just the memory of the monarchy, but perhaps its future shape. And so, the monarchy finds itself reborn not through fanfare or flags, but through secrets, shadows, and one final stroke of Charles's pen. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.